Hello, I'm Beth Caswell, and thank you for joining us. If you love the thrill of discovery and you have a thirst for knowledge, you're going to really enjoy this journey. We're going to be traveling thousands of years in just the space of a few moments. Throughout all of time, the ancient Egyptians built fabulous tombs for their leaders and kings, and inside each tomb, they placed the objects they felt the buried person would need in their afterlife. As time went on, the location of many of these tombs was forgotten. Now, as we discover these burial chambers, their contents lead us to amazing discoveries about how ancient Egyptians lived. A young prince who lived in Egypt about 3,300 years ago was a lot like boys today. He enjoyed sports. He swam, wrestled, hunted, and fished. He also liked playing games with his friends. But in one way, he was not at all like most of the other boys. He was a prince who became the pharaoh, or ruler of Egypt, when he was only 9 or 10 years old.
It's November 1922. The news of the day is fairly routine stuff. A power struggle in Russia, a civil war in China. Here at home, the impeachment of a governor, routine stuff. What the world needs is something exciting, something to lift it out of the post-war gloom from World War I. And the Sunday after Thanksgiving, it happens. From that strange, mysterious land of Egypt comes a report of an amazing treasure hunt that has struck gold. After years of searching, an Egyptologist named Howard Carter has discovered the almost completely intact tomb of the boy king Tutankhamun. Untouched for 33 centuries, filled with breathtaking treasures crafted more than 1,000 years before Christ. This is the greatest archaeological discovery of all time.
Speak his name softly to Tutankhamun, treasured in antiquity, sealed in a tomb. Now wave us a tapestry, silver and gold, sing us a song of him, centuries old, centuries old, centuries old.
I'm a Canadian growing up in Canada. We had heard a lot about King Tut in school and such, but there's a lot of exhibits that would come through every now and again, I guess, or a lot of stuff in books, and then finally they started doing touring exhibits as I got older on artifacts from King Tut. Of course, we know I think it was like in the early 1920s, they discovered his tomb and started digging and bringing his stuff to the surface and to light, which was placed in the museum inside of Cairo. What I know about King Tut is he was an amazing man during his short lifespan. I believe he became king when he was about 8 years old, and I think he died when he was 18, so he really didn't have a long lifespan, but in the time that he was king, he was very instrumental in doing many things. One of the things I understand was pushing back on some of the religion that had come in by the person before him, and he had knocked that out and kind of got back to, I guess, the basics of the time. It's just one of the things. Of course, there's a lot of controversy with everybody trying to figure out how he ended up dying. Many people say that it was a blow to the back of the head. Apparently, they've done CAT scans and stuff on his skull, and they've found that there's a crushing point at the bottom of it. So speculation is, was it the person who followed him? Was it that person's wife? Or was it his chariot driver? Nobody knows for certain. Of course, there's also a theory that, he may have fallen and banged his head. Nobody really knows for sure. But what he did leave behind was a legacy that to this day still draws many, many spectators and visitors to not only Cairo, but when the artifacts travel around. The most famous, of course, of being, and I don't know the correct term for it, but it would be the headpiece or the so-called mask, which of course is a piece of art and is very beautiful and very valuable. But everybody probably associates that with King Tut. But that wasn't the only thing that I found in the museum to be intriguing. There's so many things that were in his tomb that were brought up and set upon in this room in the museum. It's actually it's a really, really interesting place. Highly encourage anybody who's ever going to have the opportunity either to see the traveling show of his artifacts or to get a chance to go to the museum, which is a wonderful museum in downtown in Cairo, and just wander through and make sure you take some time to spend in the King Tut room, because it's just absolutely amazing.
Y pueden ver aquí el trabajo del vestido con la falda o el adorno dorado.
You know, this is the small king, 18 years old, second one in the scene. So we're going to see everything belongs to him.
Dass man seine Dienerschaften umbringt.
Many of the objects Tut used in everyday life have been found by archaeologists. Egyptians of Tutankhamun's time believed in a spirit world. They thought people went to the spirit world after they died, so they built great tombs as burial places for their pharaohs and other important people. They put things in the tombs to be enjoyed in the next life. Tut died when he was only 18, before his tomb was finished. The people put him in another tomb and filled it with treasures. Robbers eventually broke into most of the great tombs of Egypt. They stole the gold and other treasures, but Tut's burial place was well hidden. The tomb of another pharaoh was built on top of it. Drifting desert sand covered the entrance.
I started getting into ancient Egypt probably about 2 to 3 years ago. And one of the things that was most interesting to me about Egypt was the pharaoh King Tut. And the reason King Tut was really interesting to me was the fact that, you know, he became a pharaoh at such a young age. He was, I believe, 9 or 10 years old when he became a pharaoh. And another thing that was really interesting is that, you know, he died at such a young age. He died at the age of 19. And he died so suddenly that they actually didn't have time to give him a pharaoh's tomb. So he actually took a vizier's tomb. So there's quite a few different artifacts that you can find in King Tut's tomb. Along with there's a wooden statue of him, and it's kind of funny because you can see, if you look at it from the side, it's actually cracked because once the wood dried up, it actually cracked the side of it, but you can see it really, really well from the front.
Night shades are closing, tomb shadows move, but the dark is not light enough, and the cause of the young king's death is as mysterious today as the facts surrounding his birth. It might have been a natural death. He was a frail child. Was it murder? There's slim evidence of that. An accident? Possibly. He wasn't 19 when he died, that's all we know for sure. Well, there was much beating of the chest and sobs of mourning in the valley of the Nile, and the young and childless Ankhes and Amun comes to grips with an ominous threat to her crown. There are those who would wrest it from her. We still have her letter addressed to the king of the Hittites. "My husband is dead," writes the queen, "and I have no son. Do you have a grown-up son? Send me one, and I will make him king of Egypt."